Before the video gets started, I just want to say I am not a lore expert. Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. And today we're going to be talking about KEGG-orr-ack, the Aeldari laughing god. But anyways, before we get into the video, I do regular biblical videos on Mondays, and every Thursday will be a Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible series. Also, there's going to be some changes. As I said in my community post, I made a Reacts channel, so all my React videos will now be on that channel. And I'll put the links in the description if you want to check it out. And then the comedy series, Rise of Space Marine Dude, will be on its own channel as well. So that way, each gets to the audience that it needs to get to, instead of just being on here and it being a hodgepodge and screwing up the algorithm. So anyways, so there's some new channels, and if you like what you see, please consider liking and subscribing. All right, let's get started. KEGG-orr-ack, also known as the Laughing God, as well as the Great Harlequin, the Great Fool, and the First Fool. The Aeldari god of creativity, artists, deception, and trickery is one of the deities of Aeldari mythology and the central figure of the Aeldari Harlequins' belief. Alone among the Aeldari gods, KEGG-orr-ack is believed to have survived the fall of the Aeldari unscathed and escaped the fate of the rest of the Aeldari pantheon, who were consumed or badly fractured by She Who Thirsts. According to the legend, this Aeldari deity survived because his mocking nature distanced him from the collective psychic corruption and decadence of the ancient Aeldari Empire, whose reflection in the Empyrean eventually became the chaos god of Slaanesh. Unknown to the Aeldari, KEGG-orr-ack is in actuality one of three Aeldari gods to have survived the fall. Or in actuality, The other two being Isha, the goddess of fertility and nature, who was held captive of the Garden of in the Garden of Nurgle, in the realm of chaos within the warp, and the god of war, Kayla Mincha Kane, who lives on as fractured collective gestalt through his avatars within the infinity circuits of the Asuryani craft worlds. Aeldari myth explains that while Slaanesh fought with Cain, the laughing god escaped into the webway and hid amongst its myriads of tunnels. These tales suggest that he remains there still, unassailable, laughing at the chaos gods as he hatches bitter plans for revenge. It is believed that he is the only being in existence who knows every single path through the labyrinth dimension of the webway. This might explain how his disciples possess such an intimate knowledge of its twists and turns, for the Harlequins walk the webway without fear, appearing and disappearing at will. So well versed are they in the webway's secret routes that many other Aeldari have credited the servants of the Laughing God with supernatural powers. There are these who claim that KEGG-orr-ack walks amongst the children from time to time, wearing the disguise of an anonymous Harlequin player. Whatever the truth of such tales, the Laughing Gods is the only authority that the Harlequins recognize as they fight their wars, and perform their mythic dances across the void, and for all the surviving Aeldari kindreds in his name. Alright, so now we're getting into the history. KEGG-orr-ack is the Aeldari god of deception, stealth, creativity, art, and trickery. It was he who tricked the outsider into eating other Catan, according to the Aeldari legend during the war in heaven between the Old Ones and the Necrontyr millions of Terran years ago. Those Aeldari who followed him, known as the Harlequins, are protected from Slaanesh's eternal thirst for Aeldari souls in a different way from the Craftworld brethren. excuse me, while Craftworld Aeldari and Asuryani wear spirit stones, which absorb their souls when they die to prevent them from being devoured by Slaanesh once they enter the warp. The Aeldari Harlequins are directly protected by their faith in their god's power, becoming one with his own warp emanation upon their death. The only exception to this are the Harlequin solitaires, whose souls must be won from Slaanesh after their deaths by the Laughing God. The Laughing God should not be confused with the Catan called the Deceiver. There are a pair of stories in the Aeldari mythology about the Laughing God and the Deceiver, which sometimes causes this confusion. In one, the Laughing God tricks the outsider into eating many other Catan, driving him insane. In the other, the Deceiver consumed several Catan to increase his own power and convinced the Nightbringer and the Void Dragon to do likewise. Neither of these Catan nor the Deceiver were driven insane. There is more obvious difference between the Laughing God and the Deceiver. The Laughing God was created by the collective psychic belief of the ancient Aeldari impacting the psychically reactive energies of the immaterium, in the same way as were Kala Mencha Kane and Isha and other Aeldari gods, and such KEGG-orr-ack is an entity of the warp. This belief is supported by his ability to compete for Aeldari souls with Slaanesh. The Deceiver is a Catan, a Necron star god, a sentient being of solely physical matter whose natural environment lies at the core of the stars in real space. A Catan is a creature purely of the material universe. It has no soul and thus no emanation in the dimension of the Empyrean. The mysteries of the Immaterium are beyond the comprehension of the Catan, who find the energies of the warp to be inimical to their existence and are thus extremely vulnerable to the use of all psychic powers. Alright, we'll read this final act here. In recent years, the Harlequins' war against chaos has been characterized by a newfound urgency. Fully masques have become an ever more common sight among the stars. Appearing from the webway, they can be found performing within the realms of their Asuryani, Exodite, and Drukhari kin, or battling the galaxy's desperate intelligent races in vicious campaigns of apparently random violence. As the 41st millennium of the Terran calendar comes to a close, more and more Aeldari of every kindred vanished into the webway, forsaking their former lives to take up the Harlequin's mask. The Harlequins' numbers are growing, and many among the Aeldari wonder why. The truth is inspirational and terrifying in equal measure. At the very heart of the secret craft world that lies deep within the most hidden reaches of the webway, the so-called Black Library, there lies a silver-lit vault. Therein stands a plinth made of finely graven obstinite, upon which rests a crystalline book said to contain the words of KEGG-orr-ack himself. Since the fall of the Aeldari, the tome's covers have remained closed, sealed shut with flickering chains of light. Yet now, long-awaited portents have come to pass. A fallen sorcerer seeks the lore of the library. A king stirs in his court of death and silence, preparing to rise once more within the madness's eye. The champion of the ruinous powers prepares to seize a realm long denied, as the signs of Rana Dandra have come to pass. So the bands of light about the tome have flickered and died. Now at last, the tome has fallen open. Within its pages, the Shadowwearers have found a script, a secret final act that changes utterly the tale of the fall. Penned in inks of light and shadow, these words present a slender hope, detailing an intricate, galaxy-spanning performance with potential to change the fate of the Aeldari race. Always, the strands of fate have pointed toward the victory of chaos during the last mythic battle of creation, known to the Aeldari as the Rana Donder. Yet within the pages of the crystal tomb is recorded KEGG-orr-ack's ultimate jest. A way to trick Slaanesh into expending all her power, not to destroy the Aeldari, but to save them. Thank goodness. How such an impossibility could come to pass is unclear, for on this matter the final act is infuriatingly vague. Yet the Harlequins take their god's word on faith alone, for their devotion to KEGG-orr-ack is total and his method being beyond question or reproach. Thus they say begun the steps of this final dance, and will see it completed, or else face absolute destruction in the attempt. Alright. Make sure, okay. Had to make sure I had that there. So, KEGG-orr-ack's rose. Some Aeldari artifacts are items of incredible rarity, ancient treasures that are carefully maintained and stored within the Black Library by the Harlequins and other Aeldari faithful of the Laughing God, representing the barbed gift given in jest by the Laughing God to the Aeldari crone goddess Moroi-heg. KEGG-orr-ack's rose contains thorned monofilaments of shadow silk, existing in the penumbra between real space and the labyrinth dimension of the webway. These shadow silk strands bypass even the thickest armor as though it did not exist. Once with the body of the victim, the rose's threads uncoil, a blossom of molecule thin blades unfurling at the end of each. Thus the foe is slain instantly, as the thickest of bloody bladed roses burst forth into their chest. Alright. Oh, and I forgot to say this, I'll put something at the beginning. I am not a lore expert, so I do want to get that out there. But anyways, so we're going to go to the biblical side of things here. Okay. We're going to start, of course, with Psalm 35:16. I brought this up, with the Harlequins, but I always like to bring it up. Every time I bring up something, I'll bring these, but also with something new, which is very interesting. I brought something very interesting, and I'll show you here in a second. But Psalm 35:16, like godless jesters at a feast, they gnashed at me with their teeth and malice. That's interesting. Okay. Proverbs 30:13. There is a generation. Hold on. Right here. Excuse there's a game going on, so I apologize if you hear anything. So, there is a generation that curseth their father, and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, now pay attention to this part here, how lofty are their eyes? That's interesting. It means their eyes are lifted up. And their eyelids right here are lifted up. That's interesting. Because we know elves, right, kind of got that little tilt to their eyes, and they're lifted up a little bit. So, interesting. There's a generation whose teeth are as swords. And their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among men. And when you hear about these elves and stuff like that, they're the pure elitists, right, per se, right? And they look down upon everybody else but themselves. So, that's interesting. But now, we're going to get into jesters and all that. And why do they always paint themselves white? Why do these tribes everywhere, they paint themselves white? We're going to see why here in a second. So, not this part, but the next one. The trickster, the jester, the clown. The brief mythology and the ancient history of the harbingers of laughter and fear. So, clown-like characters have been around for thousands of years. Jesters date back at least as far as ancient Egypt. Tracing back the figure of the jester leads us to the mythological trickster. Tricksters are archetypical characters who appear in the myths of many different cultures. The Bible talks about these. Actually, we'll get into that. But they cross and often break both physical and societal rules, violating principles of social and natural order, playfully disrupting normal life and then reestablishing it on a new basis. They often question and mock authority, and usually fond of breaking rules and playing tricks on both humans and gods. Hermes plays this role in some Greek myths. He is the messenger of the gods, patron of thieves, and the inventor of lying, a gift he passed on to his son, Autocles. Autolycus. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. My bad. The trickster is also unconstrained by form or gender. In Norse mythology, the trickster Loki is also a shapeshifter. And I'll bring that up too. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Okay, right here. The book of Enoch, chapter 19. And Uriel said to me, here shall stand the angels who connected themselves with women, and their spirits assuming many different forms are defiling mankind and leading them astray unto sacrificing unto demons as gods. Interesting. So we have a shapeshifter right here, just like an Enoch there, who can move freely between genders. At one point, he even becomes a mare who later gives birth to Odin's 8-legged horse. Okay. Yeehaw. Alright. Now it's going to get even a little bit crazier here. Alright, so this is the book of Enoch, chapter 106. Now, I think this is actually talking about the Nephilim and not Noah. This is the first book of Enoch, but there's some dispute whether these chapters are actually in the book of Enoch and all that. So take this with a grain of salt. And the reason why I say this is probably not Noah is because we're not given this in the Bible at all. It would have said it, right? But anyways, we're going to start in chapter 9 or 106. I'm sorry. Verse 2. We're going to start in verse 2. And his body was white as snow and red as the blooming rose. And the hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun, and whose house was very bright. Okay. Did I even? Yeah, right here. So, oh, come on. I gotta remember where it was. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Venus tells her story. Venus could listen to more. She broke it. Right. Okay. So this is Venus here. He's talking about Venus. This is the Aeneid. Sorry. And this is talking about Aeneas. This guy here, Aeneas. This is one, the Aeneid, the Iliad, Odyssey. So, okay, so turning away, her neck shone with a rosy light, and her hair breathed with divine odor of ambrosia. She walked and knew she was truly a goddess. Okay, let's go back here. And his body was white as snow and red as the blooming of a rose. Huh. Is this, how these men of renown were born, right? This is maybe what they look like and stuff. And then, did I even bring that up? No. But you'll see this a lot, okay? They're like this rosy light, and they're white. Like the skin is white. Not all of them. Not all the Nephilim were the same thing, right? Different kinds of Nephilim. But this is interesting here. Like these renowned ones seem to be like this. I guess what this says to be Noah, but I don't know. I'm not there yet, right? Because we're not given this in the Bible. And I think the Bible would have told us if this is the way Noah looked. So just take this with a grain of salt, okay? But, anyways, and his body was white as snow, red as a blooming rose, and the hair of his head, long locks, were as white as wool. And he opened up his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun, and the whole house was very bright. And thereupon arose in the hands of the midwife, opened his mouth, and the Lord and conversed with the Lord of righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid of him and fled, and came to his father Methuselah. And he said unto him, I have begotten a strange son. See, this is where I kind of have to deviate from the book of Enoch here, because there's a lot of them that have been corrupted and stuff, so you got to be careful when it comes to extra biblical books. If it doesn't agree with the word, then you just kind of have to just keep it in the back of your mind. Okay. And his father Lamech was afraid of him and fled, came to his father. Blah, blah, blah. So he begotten a strange son, diverse from any unlike man, and resembling the sons of God of heaven. And see, interesting. And his nature is different, and he is not like us. And his eyes are the rays of the sun. Noah was pretty much like us, so this is, again, I have to deviate from this, man. I don't know if I can believe this. I think this is talking about a Nephilim here, but that's my opinion. Okay, indifferent is not like us, and his eyes are the rays of the sun. And you'll see this a lot. Like you see it in our entertainment too. These supernatural beings with light in their eyes, right? Okay. And his countenance is glorious. And it seems to me that he has not sprung up from me, but from the angels. Because remember here, the angels who have connected themselves with women. Okay. And I fear that in his days a wonder may have wrought on the earth. And now, my father, I'm here to petition thee and implore thee that thou mayest go to Enoch, our father, and learn from his truth. For his dwelling place is amongst the angels. And when Methuselah heard the words of his son, and he came to the ends of the earth, and he heard that I was there, and cried aloud, and I heard his voice and came to him. And you know what? I just thought of something. Hold on. Right? We're going to talk about the White Walkers here. Look at their eyes. Right? And then their hair, white as wool. Right? And in the Bible, we have what are called the Rephaim. These are the undead, right? These are giants reanimated, basically. And you'll see this, the way they're talked about like this. Right? So, very interesting. And then, of course, the Targaryens. They got blonde hair, whitish hair, right? So, interesting. Okay. So we're going to move on here. Now we're going to talk about these trickster spirits. 1 John 4:1. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. If only Christians did this. Studied the Bible, learned it themselves, and, see what people are trying to tell them, see if it's the truth or not, but anyways, I know you guys do, but the majority of Christians don't, which is unfortunate, but hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. So, there you go. Don't believe every angel or everything that comes into your dreams or whatever, right? Test them, right? Paul tells us to test the spirits, right? So, and confesseth that and the Spirit confesseth not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God, and that is the spirit of Antichrist. Okay, we talked about that a week or two ago. So 1 Kings 22:23. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets. Now I want to preface this. These prophets should have known what they're talking about. The people listening to these prophets should have known what they were talking about, right? It's not up to God, okay, to put information in your mind, to read, you know what I mean? And stop believing everything you hear, just like with me. I always tell you guys, don't believe a single word that I say until you looked it up yourself, right? But anyways, I'm digressing. So the Lord has put a mouth of all the prophets, and the Lord has spoken evil concerning thee. So this is the king Ahab. He was a very evil dude, so he deserved this. But Zedekiah the son, oh, I don't know why I read that last part. So I'll read this again since I screwed that up. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of these prophets, and the Lord has spoken evil concerning thee. Okay, so he's letting these trickster spirits do their thing, right? You have it with Saul, right? The same thing with Saul here. Hold on. Or has spoken evil concerning thee. So there it is. Okay, now we're moving on to Warhammer 40k lore again here. I'm going to talk about the Aeldari Mythology. Aeldari Mythology, also called Aeldari Myth Cycles, is an ancient cultural force of myths and legends which binds the surviving members of the Aeldari species together and form a basis for much of their thinking about their ancient past. There were several gods that composed the pantheon of Aeldari myth, yet all but three, KEGG-orr-ack, Isha, and Kyla-Mencha-Kane, were destroyed in the fall of the Aeldari and the birth of the chaos god Slaanesh, absorbed, like so many other Aeldari souls, into the psychic mass of She Who Thirsts. A new Aeldari god, Yennead, who is not part of the original mythology, is said to be forming from the souls of the Asuryani dead within the infinity circuits of the craft worlds, and to have recently partially awoken during the Battle of Port Demensness in circa 999 Millennium 41, giving the rise to the new Aeldari kindred known as the Ynnari. Okay. So, we'll read War in Heaven here. Okay. So, Cain tortured Isha and Kornos, utilizing every cool art he knew. Many of the Aeldari gods thought Cain was going too far and secretly supported Isha and Kornos, but only one was willing to stand up for them in the public. The smith god Val petitioned for their release, and eventually he and Cain came to an agreement. In 1 year's time, Cain would release Isha and Kornos, in exchange for 100 divinely crafted swords. Val was such a master smith, with such a single blade of his was incalculable value. Indeed, a single mortal armed with such a sword of Val could stand against 1,000 warriors armed with mundane weapons. Val immediately set to work, rejoicing. Unfortunately, though, when the year was up, he had only completed 99 swords, rendering the bargain void. He took an ordinary mortal blade and mixed it with the others, hoping that Cain would not notice. Upon delivery, Cain was so pleased with the weapons that he released Isha and Kornos, forthwith, delighting in the craftsmanship that had gone into the swords. It was only when Isha and Kornos were long gone that Cain discovered the one mortal sword. Cain roared in anger, calling Val a cheat, a liar, and a thief. He immediately set off to track Val down and make him pay. The conflicts that followed were remembered as the War in Heaven, polarized the Aeldari gods as Cain's faction and Val's engaged in a bloody warfare for an eternity. Gods changed sides, great deeds of heroism and of craving evil were performed by both factions, and the war was mirrored in a struggle between the Aeldari and the mortal realm, and the Asurian himself never took a side, watching the carnage impassively, slowly coming to regret his impetus in sentencing Isha and Kurnos. This is not the only version of the Aeldari myth of the 100 Swords of Val. Another consisted of the Aeldari and Cain going to war with the Necrons and failing because of the one mortal sword, thus encapsulating in the Aeldari mythology more of the truth of their species, that they were created as a psychic warrior race by the Old Ones to help defeat their enemies, the Necrons and the Catan. All right, so we're gonna end it there, guys. Thank you guys for supporting me, and I hope you guys like this decision of me splitting up the content. That way, the biblical people who just want to listen to the biblical stuff and the lore and whatnot, which the Warhammer 40K and the biblical stuff will be on this channel, right? I'm not changing that. That's what made this channel, so we're sticking to that. But then my React channel and then the Rise of Space Marine channel, I'll put all the information in once I make that. I have the React channel made, but I'm still working on the comedy one. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.